I am sure that you are familiar with the quotation that goes as follows. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. With this in mind, I am beginning a new series of studies on the Look and Live YouTube channel, where we're gonna go into history to learn a lesson. The first video we're gonna be talking about today is what happened during Jonestown and what exactly could we learn from this history. Friends, let's get right into this.
Started as an effort by a charismatic preacher to build a new society, but it ended, of course, with the tragic deaths of more than 900 people. Here's NBC's Joe Fryer.
Jonestown was supposed to be a paradise in the South American jungle. It was anything but.
The saddest part about this tragedy is that good, decent people died who were well-intentioned.
The story begins in America during the 1970s when Jim Jones created a religious movement called People's Temple. The charismatic minister fought for civil rights and had a multiracial family.
It was the original Rainbow family,
including his adopted son, Jim Jones Jr.
Did his message at the time resonate with you?
Yes. No isms, no sexism, racism.
But in the new book, The Road to Jonestown, author Jeff Gwynne details how Jones started to change.
He's convinced himself that he is some sort of superhuman martyr.
Jones persuaded nearly 1,000 followers to move to a remote jungle in Guyana.
The concept was to build a new world.
A socialist utopia.
Jonestown was described as his paradise, and it was not.
Former member Leslie Wagner Wilson says followers were overworked and underfed.
And then as time wore on, I realized that there was no future in Jonestown. Jim became increasingly paranoid.
Jones was obsessed with revolutionary suicide. He felt followers should be prepared to die for their cause, even having them drink fruit punch he claimed was poison.
Only after most of the people drank the liquid did he tell them, it's not poison, I was just testing you.
In November 1978, a concerned congressman, Leo Ryan, flew to Guyana to investigate, accompanied by NBC News. While some followers praised Jonestown, others wanted out.
What is your wish today? To go back home. And where's home? U.S.
As the congressman left, he took 15 defectors with him, angering Jones.
People play games, friend. They lie. What can I do about lies? Are you people going to leave us? I just beg you, please leave us.
He ordered gunmen to follow the group to the nearby airstrip, where they opened fire. 5 were killed, including Congressman Ryan, NBC correspondent Don Harris, and cameraman Bob Brown. Sound engineer Steve Sung and field producer Robert Flick escaped, as did Ryan aide and future Congresswoman Jackie Spear. Back at the commune, Jones gathered his followers for a final sermon.
We've had as much of this world as you're going to get. Let's just be done with it. Let's be done with the agony of it.
This time, Jones served a punch spiked with cyanide. More than 900 died, 300 of them children. Jones shot himself.
We know from autopsies conducted later that a considerable number of people were held and forcibly injected with the poison.
In the end, how many relatives did you lose?
I lost 11 relatives.
Wagner Wilson and her 3-year-old lived because they were part of a small group that escaped during the confusion that morning, hiking through more than 30 miles of dense jungle to safety.
How scared were you to try to escape?
I was terrified. I was waiting for a bullet to hit at any moment. I was prepared to die on that day.
I don't know how I can ever describe it in words.
Jim Jones Jr., 18 at the time, lost his wife, but he lived because he was in Georgetown, Guyana's capital, as part of his frequent public relations work for the temple.
So the million-dollar question is, would I have done it? I can't say I would, but I can't say I wouldn't have.
That shows how much power Jones had.
And part of that, I believe, is because we all are looking for a place to fit into the world. We're looking for love, we're looking for acceptance, and Jim Jones provided that.
Today, a memorial in Oakland serves as a remembrance for those who died, predominantly African Americans and the elderly, whom Jones's initial message resonated with.
I think the lessons of Jonestown is to really go within so you don't have to go without.
It's better to live for a cause than die for it.
Despite what happened, the minister's son still goes by the name Jim Jones Jr.
I'm proud of the upbringing and the education I was given. That's a lot to be proud of. I also have to accept the horrific tragedy that my father caused, but he caused it, not me.
For Today, Joe Fryer, NBC News.
Well, here we have it, my friends. Now, this is the history of Jonestown Massacre. I hope you've learned something. Now, what I'm going to share with you are the lessons that you need to know about a cult. Now, some people like to say and classify just any religious group as a cult without a good understanding of what a cult actually is. We want to make sure we do not call the wrong group of people as cult just because we don't agree with what they teach or do. That's number one. The second group that I would like to speak about are those that are cults. How do I know what a cult look like? How do I identify a cult? How can I make sure I never fall in that category? Now, there were many loopholes here. There were many errors that were made. There were many things that went wrong. There was many deceptions in Jonestown. It's an unfortunate reality. It is the past. We can't go back to it, but we can certainly learn from it. Now, here is the thing that I'm going to share with you right now. A minister by the name of Mark Finley. He is an evangelist. He gives about 5 different signs of a cult. You need to know what these signs are, and I'm gonna go through each one of them with you very quickly. Now, the first thing that Mark Finley teaches on how to identify a cult, number 1, cults have a single powerful leader who becomes the cult's messiah. Keep in mind, a single man oftentimes oversees everything in a cult movement, and he is the voice, the heart, the head of that movement. Identifying feature number 2, the cult leader's word, his teachings becomes absolute truth. Now, when an occult is in a position and what they say and what they teach cannot be challenged, even to the point where what they teach is above the word of God. Identifying feature number 3, cults manipulate. Cults use pressure tactics and deception to recruit members, and they coerce members into submission, into staying. Friends, this is another move as well. They take advantage of a person's vulnerability, weakness, pain, and trouble, and they exploit on that individual. You need to be aware of this. Let us now move on to identifying feature number 4. Cults appeal to miracles as a sign of the divine credentials, especially when their teachings contradict Bible truth. Very significant. Oftentimes what they do contradict the Bible. In order to appease their conscience and to convince their masses to continue to follow them, they tend to work miracles. Let's go to number 5. Cults isolate. Cults isolate converts not only from the outside world, but even from their families. A very dangerous thing. You notice how Jim Jones took the people from where they were and brought them into an isolated place where he can have total control over them, where no family members could influence them? That's the attitude of a cult. So keep those 5 features in mind. I'm also going to link up the study guide from Mark Finley in the description of this video. Look into that, learn something from history as well. Now, I would like to close up with the words of Jesus. Jesus says, "For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. In verse 25, he says, "Behold, I have told you before." All right, friends, I hope today you've learned a lesson from history.